So, in light of recent events, that being the June Nintendo Direct, this will now be the 4th episode of Obscure Interests. Sorry for anyone who wanted to see the Kingdom Hearts Mobile, Dragon Quest Mobile, and Final Fantasy Mobile Obscure Interests video. That can wait a little bit longer. Again, sorry. Anyways, enjoy the video, I guess. I don't know. Hello everyone, this is Jasper. If this is your first time here, welcome. This is a little video series called Obscure Interests, a series where I talk about the forgotten, weird, and most importantly, obscure content. But if you're a returning person, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about an underrated gem of a series, that being the Denpa Men, which if you read the thumbnail, the title, whatever, you'd probably already know that, so sorry. Now, I already had a script and everything for this video, but I want to redo it since, frankly, I feel like I didn't explain it correctly, or just, you know, point being, I wanted to redo it. I wanted to redo the old script, and by redo the old script, I mean make an entirely new one, so, yeah. Now, for the people new here, you're probably wondering why I, someone with a barely noticeable channel, am making a video on the Denpa Men, let alone an entire series about obscure things that pique my interest. Haha, I did a reference to my own silly thing. Anyways, it's because 1, because I'm bored and I have nothing better to do, 2, because most people don't have the balls to talk about these things, and 3, that's all of my reasons. Now then, with all of that out of the way, let's begin this video of an underrated gem that I really, really like, as you can tell by my last video. I'm not going to introduce myself since I already did at the beginning of the video, so with the snazzy intro out of the way, let's begin this silly little video where I try to give more notoriety to the Denpa Men. Denpa Men, or Denpa Ningen if you're Japanese, are silly little guys that live in radio waves that come in different sizes, colors, and head shapes. They can also have antennas or no antennas. Well, what are antennas, you might be asking? Antennas can do a multitude of things, like heal allies, buff allies, debuff enemies, or do elemental attacks. Pretty much assigning them roles of, say for example, a white mage or a black mage from Final Fantasy. And if anyone's brains went dial-up while I was explaining that, tough luck! Anyways, the interesting thing about the height and colors of the Denpa Men is that, take for example, if a Denpa Men were incredibly tall and dark blue, the Denpa Men would have really good HP, but lack any evasion. And with the Denpa Men being blue, it'd have elemental resistance to water, but be weak to electricity. Pretty neat, right? I do want to say this right now, my explanation with Denpa Men stats is very simplified, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But if I did explain it correctly, cool. Now then, moving on from that... The Denpa Men as a series was made by Genius Sonority, a Japanese game dev company most famous for their spin-off Pokemon games. This company also has staff mostly comprised of people who've worked on the Dragon Quest series. Speaking of... Anyways, Genius Sonority was founded in June of 2002, and around 10 years after they founded it, they made the Denpa Men, which is what I'm talking about right now. Wow! The Denpa Men series has 5 games, with a 6th on the way, which is coming here! With a card game and a manga. However, only the first 3 games came to the US and Europe. The last 2 games, the card game and the manga, were never localized outside of Japan. I'm not really sure if I'm going to talk about them in detail in this video, or at all for that matter, since I don't really have that much info on them. Now then, with that brief history lesson out of the way, let's go into the basics of the Denpa Men. You'll see what I mean when I say the basics. Every time you start a new game in the Denpa Men 1 through 3, the little guy you start off with always has a revive antenna, and you can't change that. Unless you did some hacking, but that's besides the point. Or alternatively, if you're playing the Denpa Men 2 or 3, you can transfer your previous little guy into the game you're playing, which is actually really cool. Once you're acquainted with your little guy, okay, you know what, I'm gonna stop calling the main character Denpa Men little guy and just call them... Elvin. Note that this is one of the main Denpa Men you can get when starting a new game in the Denpa Men 1. Anyways, once you're acquainted with Elvin, it turns out that he needs your help. In the Denpa Men 1, he needs help saving his fiancée, which is named Crystal. In the Denpa Men 2, he needs help beating up an ook that's destroying his family garden. Yeah, so Elvin and Crystal banged. It's canon. In the Denpa Men 3, he needs help finding his childhood friend Crystal. And yes, this game has a timeline similar to Dragon Quest's timeline, where for the first 3 games, it's 3, 1, then 2 in chronological order. Now that you know the beginning of each game, it's time for the battle system. In the Denpa Men 1, your main commands are to auto-battle using no skills, or run from battle. However, if you tap on your Denpa Men on the bottom screen, you can manually make them do what you need them to do. In the Denpa Men 2, it's pretty much the same, but there's one more main command you can do, which is heal, which is pretty much like using no skills in the last game, except this time your Denpa Men, depending on the situation, use skills and or items to heal or revive your Denpa Men. And auto and no skills are called go for it and attack respectively now. In the Denpa Men 3, attack is now just called conserve, and there's a new command that replaces heal, that being strategy, which, oh hey, heal's here. Alright. Anyways, strategy pretty much makes your entire party do one of these 5 things. I'm not gonna be explaining it though. Also, if I explained heal wrong, please do correct me in the comments. And now it's time for the music, which has been playing in the background this entire time. The music composers for the Denpa Men 1 were Hitoshi Sakimoto, Masaharu Iwata, Mitsuhiro Kaneda, Kimihiro Abe, Azusa Shiba, and Yoshimi Kudo. The music composers in 2 and 3 are the same, but Kimihiro Abe is now gone. Most likely left the company or was given a different role in development? I don't know. But you can thank these people for bops like... And my 2 personal favorites. Don't even get me started about my favorite part! Can just hear the clock tower bells in this for some reason. I love it so much. Like, God, these people are geniuses and they can totally Fangirling aside, I think that's all for the basics of the Denpa Men. Well, aside from the 4th and 5th game. Do I talk about them? I know earlier in the video I said otherwise, but I mean, I could mention them. So, the Denpa Men Free and new Denpa Men are things that exist. That's super sick. The Denpa Men Free starts off with your main little guy getting bullied, and he wants your help to find armor that can make him stronger. Also, in the Denpa Men Free, there's no preset heroes. Your little guy is randomly generated via the Nintendo 3DS's console ID, which means even if you restart your save, it's still going to be the same little guy. In the start of new Denpa Men, you actually catch your main little guy instead of him asking for your help. And when you do, you get 2 other little goobers called Yuki, my personal favorite, cause just look at her! And Ryuta. The most well-known little guy you can get is Haruto. Everyone else I can barely get any info on. Which is sad, cause some of these little guys are adorable! Anyways, new Denpa Men also has 3 whole save files, which is interesting for a mobile game. I'm not really sure what else to add, so... The Denpa Men trading card game! It was a thing that exists. There's also not that much info about this. But, some of the cards have codes that you can use for the Denpa Men Free to either get in-game items or Denpa Men, which is actually pretty coolio. And then there's the manga, which I barely know anything about, which sucks. So, yeah. As you can tell by the lack of info I have for the card game, the manga, free and new, the Denpa Men is very underrated. And while sure blaming Nintendo for not marketing it enough, or good enough if you've seen that trailer with the IRL actors, is logical, I feel like another reason why it failed was because the games were released not too far apart from each other, giving some people the impression that the games were rushed. And while sure they might have been rushed, the passion in these games is unreal, both in gameplay and music, oh my god! But that's just my assumption and should be taken with a lot of grain of salt. Now, there's actually some good news for the franchise. There's a new game in the Denpa Men series that's going to be released for Switch. And while, sure, it was in a direct that has a lot of other good titles pretty much overshadowing it, it's still pretty big news we've heard in a while from the series. Cause, like, this is the first Denpa Men game in a while that we have gotten, which is insane to think about. The last game we got, at least here in the US and Europe, was 3. That was the last game we got for a while. And then the new Denpa Men out of nowhere just gets announced in this direct, which is insane, and thank you, Nintendo! Anyways, I think that's gonna be it from me. Thanks for watching, if you've made it this far into the video. Bye!